Hello, everyone. Hello, Lisette, and welcome to the year of being 70, episode 30. Can you believe it's
30.
30? It's our 30th conversation. So, I am Lucy Macara. I am in the UK, in Norfolk. Lisette Schoutemaker is in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, obviously. And we have known each other since we were 7 years old. Our mothers were best friends. And we have, at the age of 70, we've decided to have a chat every week to unpick what it's like being 70, having known each other all this time, where we've been, what we've been through, and where we are now and where we're going. So, what are we going to talk about this week, Lisette?
Well, I thought I was in a conversation with actually a younger woman, and I noticed she was very nostalgic. And so I wondered about nostalgia, what that is, and it actually I feel, are you nostalgic?
I can be nostalgic, but I suppose in a way I try not to be. I don't want to um I don't want to kind of get into a regretful kind of I miss this stuff kind of attitude, I suppose, because maybe I just don't want the pain of that. So yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, certainly there are some things I'm nostalgic about, but
Like what? Like what?
what kind of childhoody sorts of things? It's not like I wish it was like that now. I wish things hadn't changed. I just, there's just a kind of pleasure, I suppose, in looking back and kind of re-imbuing yourself in the atmosphere and the feelings and the experiences that you're never going to live again and will never come again for us.
Yeah.
And I try to think of nostalgia as a pleasant thing rather than, something that makes you grumpy, perhaps.
Yeah, but I think that's a good distinction to kind of look back. And I look back at my childhood when, of course, things were simpler. It was simpler because I didn't see the complexity. I'm sure things were very complex at the time in a different way from now that we are so, internationally connected and dependent upon, bits flying through fiberglass cables on the ocean floor. But
Exactly.
but I like that to think back and kind of feel that feeling of maybe being, protected or yeah, things being calmer in a way, but not wanting it back, not
No.
glorifying a past, at the expense of the present or the future.
Yes, yes. I mean, there used to be here. There used to be well, there was a kind of matched pair of TV series called one was called Grumpy Old Men and one was called Grumpy Old Women. And it would have a panel of I think four people per episode who were probably probably younger than us mostly anyway, not that old.
We thought
But
they were old, grumpy old men, grumpy old women. Yeah, 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 no.
but they're kind of, they were humorously kind of talking about, the things that annoyed them. And they were often things like, when I was young, it was like this, and it was much better than it is now. Sometimes it's just, the way things are now. But what makes you grumpy? And I just, do you think that we at 70 now qualify as being grumpy old women? Are we allowed to be grumpy old women? Is that something that we can kind of take? Is that something quite pleasurable? Do older people enjoy being grumpy, do you think?
Yes, maybe it is like a not so secret pleasure. Well, I try very much not to be a grumpy old woman and not to go about and say, in my time, when I was your age, it happens, slips out occasionally, but then more, I hope, in a sort of kind of comparison to how things are now. But I am grumpy about some things, and I'm not sure whether I've always been grumpy about those things or whether that I'm
I think
very,
got
I get
worse.
very grumpy, very, when I'm in a movie and you're in the movie, you're in the scene, and especially, that moment when the thing is going to happen and people behind me start to whisper, I just, I look at them as if, with this very forbidding look, which kind of often has them whisper louder. Or,
I was going to say, does it work?
well, the other day I was on my bicycle here, and in Holland we have, pedestrian path and bicycle paths are red these days, so they're easily distinguishable. Not everybody knows that, not all the tourists know. So there were three boys kind there, and I was ringing my bell. Something is really for grumpy old women, grumpy old people in general. The bell is a very good outlet of comfort, and you can, ring it in different ways. And when I was overtaken, I was pointing at them like that. So that's the pedestrian, and this is the bike. And there was a man came in that store. And he was really laughing. And he said, I saw you. And I said, did you see my educational impulse? And we had a good time, but it was a bit of, I tried to educate the world
Of
to
course.
conform to some rules that I have set.
Yes, indeed. People need to know what's right and what's wrong by our standards.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm
Yeah.
like that in a car. I drive a lot. So yes, I'm sort of, I mean, I tend not to actually um, point to people and kind of, or I certainly don't make, hand gestures like a lot of people do when they're annoyed with other drivers. But I do talk to them in the privacy of my own car or shout at them and tell them they're idiots or worse.
Yeah.
And yes, I get, yeah,
I think there are studies that something happens when we're in a car and we want to go fast and we kind of all the other people are kind of in our way and inept drivers, and why do they go so slowly or why do they cut right across? I would never do that. There's of course some kind of the self-righteousness there too.
Yes, well, for me, it's to some extent the other way round because I have to say I have had an awful lot of speeding tickets. So in the UK we get points on our license when every time you get a speeding ticket, you get a point. You get 3 points on your license. You have 12 points. If you get to 12, you lose your license for a period. That has never.
Wow.
Yes, that has never
We don't
actually.
have that. Wow.
Yes, no, it's very punitive. So I'm sometimes driving along at the speed limit. I'm try to be very, very careful these days. And there's somebody behind me, kind of not, necessarily hooting or anything, but right up the back of the car. And I'm like, no, I will not go faster. I am not going to risk my license just so you can go faster.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
Yeah, maybe we go slower. My grandmother, bless her, the one I'm named after, my mother's mother, she was still driving, and at some point she had all these accidents, and people would drive up, bump into her from behind, and she didn't understand. But it's also she was kind of slowing down, but also when she wanted to kind of go onto the road. This is why my English fails a bit. Go onto the road, she would go and then stop, and then the other person would kind of
just
count on her going because there was absolutely no one there. So that's always kind of like, oh yeah, you sometimes do become slower. I think where I trigger other people is through my self-righteousness and through yeah, upholding all those rules and standards that I think ought to be everybody's. But also since I don't own a car, but I'm part of a car sharing system and they also have electric cars. And when you drive an electric car, you see exactly how you can earn more kilometers, more miles in your case, by going just a little bit slower.
oh, I
And
see.
and so that now kind of ties over to me drive when I'm still in a petrol car, go like when I'm a little under 100 kilometers an hour, which is the speed limit in many places, I actually save a lot of fuel, a lot of energy. So I come from this very, I'm a better citizen because I drive slower and I conserve energy while,
Yeah.
well, adding two greenhouse gases in the meantime. But yeah,
Yes, that's an interesting one. How we got onto vehicles and rules. What else? I've noticed that there are a lot of people who complain, actually mostly sort of comedians who do a kind of, they sort of, a lot of comedians in the UK do a kind of, what makes me grumpy kind of shtick as part of their routines. And a lot of people seem to be very irritated by people who walk slowly on pavements and get in, kind of meander along. And that is quite annoying. I find that quite tiresome. And I don't know. I mean, I wonder, did people walk, is this just a figment of our imagination? But when we were younger, in earlier times, did people walk more purposively and faster and not? I suppose there is the issue of them looking at their phones. That certainly happens. That
I
people.
think looking at their phones and also tourism.
Yeah, yeah,
Tourists, yeah, I mean, they don't necessarily go somewhere. They just, in the city center of beautiful Amsterdam, they stroll along and admire the view, which is what we could do. But a sense of speed was instilled in me in my education.
true.
This is another topic, but I read somewhere long ago that in every family there is things that bring you, say, the brownie points. That in some families it's being brainy, in some families being good at sports, being an athlete, and in other families it is, my family, it was certainly speed. Doing things faster was better. And
Really,
I'm still on a deprogramming of that.
that's so anything that you did had to be fast, getting your
Everything had to be
homework
fast.
done.
Anything had to be fast. Eat fast, work fast, do
Really?
fast, do everything fast. And when I first, biked with Jos through Amsterdam, I would kind of slip through, the orange traffic light. And
Yeah.
he would stand still and say, "This is a moment that I can look around and enjoy the view." And I'd kind of, what? The whole idea is to get there fast. And I'm still very aware of when I want that and what kind of a person I become when I do that.
That's interesting. Yes, I'm not, I don't know if I can't think of the thing or a thing that was sort of valued like that in my, I don't think I can put my finger on something specific. Just sort of, I don't know, getting on with life, succeeding maybe. I don't know that we had anyway, yes. So
Yeah,
what,
no, my mother, I mean, I can give examples. Maybe I've already given them. They're so funny. Like, my mother had people for dinner, and then people would say, "Oh, this is really nice." And then my mother would say, "I cooked it in 20 minutes." You know?
that
Or
was
my
the,
father would come home late from the office and we'd already be at a dinner table. And then, we'd be at dessert. And then he was finished same time as we.
that was hilarious.
And then I once had dinner with
Funny.
my father with two of my friends. And we both, had already finished our plate. Well, they were still at it. And he and I spoke about how when there's food in front of me, I just gobble it up immediately. I eat it very fast. And why? Because a dinner is also a moment of relaxation, of being together, of having a conversation. But I have not mastered the art of
Eating and talking.
slowly.
No, no, and also it always gets cold if you leave it, too long, if you're eating a hot
Yeah,
meal.
there's very good arguments for this.
Perhaps we should, yeah, sort of instill a new kind of set of manners. Eat your food first and then we'll talk.
And there was one national irritation in the Netherlands that we have solved. It is no longer there.
What on
The
earth is
main
that?
irritation of Dutch people was dog poo.
Really? Right.
It
Yes.
was the number one way up highest irritation point, and now people have the bags and you know take it away. So that was solved.
I think that was probably true at some stage here as well, that yeah, there was too much dog poo around and then we got the
Yeah,
bins and the bags and if you
yeah,
had a dog and I was yes.
yeah.
Yes, yes, no, that's a thing.
Things to be grumpy about.
Yes, what
Yeah, no sound and people who talk too loud. I sit here on my balcony And I was taught by my parents not to shout.
Yes.
You
Oh,
know,
indeed.
maybe in our own garden, but even in the house, keep your voice down. And and then there's children shouting, already annoying. But then there's parents, shouting to their children. And I go like, how can they ever learn to keep their voice down if you are shouting to them? And I would want to start an educational program for them not to shout. So yeah.
Sometimes as a parent, you have to shout. There's no
Yeah, but
way around.
not here, really. Yeah, well,
I'll
sometimes, of course,
defend
if the
parents a
child
bit
almost
here.
falls in the water, but
Mm.
otherwise,
Well,
yeah.
I get very irritated, maybe these days, maybe it's a new thing, by people who talk too much. I find I know that there are people who think internally and then speak, and I'm very much one of those. And I don't like saying things until I've thought about something. So, my speech on the whole, I mean, obviously I do rabbit on, and at times probably with you, is generally kind of edited, I'd like to think. But there are people who just think as they speak, and their speaking is the process by which they refine their ideas. So absolutely everything in their head comes out, and then I find so much of it is unnecessary, and I really want to say, look, just get to the point. What do you mean? What are you talking about? I don't need all the other stuff that goes around this. I don't want to hear your thought processes. I just want to hear what conclusions you've come to, and maybe a bit of the why, but not the how. And it I
I
find that
like looking at your face as you say this because you're I love it because I feel when that happens, what happens in me is I think you are wasting my time.
exactly, exactly. Yeah. And I understand that for those people, and it's often kind of extrovert versus introvert kind of behavior as well. And a friend of mine who is very extrovert and very does a lot of talking was saying to me, if I tried to make you talk more in a meeting and say things perhaps before you were ready, you'd feel very uncomfortable, wouldn't you? And I said, yes, absolutely. And he said, well, if you try to stop me saying all the things that I want to say and going through the process, I find that extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah.
If I have to sit and be quiet in a meeting until I've,
Yeah.
rationalized something, then that's horrible for me. So I try to be kind of understanding, but there's only a finite amount of time. And if
Yeah.
people are going to talk so much in this finite amount of time, it does feel like, to me, it feels like a waste of time. And it tends to make me go off during meetings and look at my email and do other things. And I think I think I've developed quite a good way of being able to hear the key point that comes out while I'm sort of multitasking doing something else. And so then I feel like, okay, I'm not wasting so much time now.
Yeah, so the whole
I
thing about wasting time, is that actually true? Or I mean, I impatience is one really, really, really childhood conclusion too, and impatience is like my big vice, and it can get hold of me, where I always try to be more, I wouldn't say polite, but kinder. Also kinder to a person who formulates their thoughts. Can I still be interested, even if it irks me, even if it kind of come to the point now, I want to shake them, right?
Yes,
But they
yes,
can't. They can't. You have to just go through the whole thing.
yeah, yes. And
And also, yeah.
yeah, and you have to kind of, at least I have to sort of try and find the value in listening to their process, and and try and get something out of that. So I'm not feeling I'm wasting time, that there's some other maybe form of communication going on that I should
Hmm.
be more aware of, things like that. But
Yeah.
I do also get incredibly irritated by people who talk in cliches, and kind of sort of haven't I mean, it's one thing to say, I wish people wouldn't do their thinking aloud, but that's better than not thinking at all. And I do find people who kind of just accept, the current sort of cliches. I mean, one of the ones I find dreadfully irritating, and I suspect you might not actually, is, oh, well, everything was meant to happen the way it has turned out. And so, it was all meant to be. That really irritates me for some reason. I think
So why does it irritate you
well,
so?
I think it's very easy for us, for example, in the Western world, to think, okay, that was meant to be. It wasn't quite the route I intended, but the outcome's been fine for me. So I can say, it was all meant to be. And then, you think about people who are in absolutely appalling situations and literally are dying because of these situations. And you think, you can't just say, it was all meant to be, it's all fine, settle down, just enjoy the outcome. That is not okay. There are things that are traumatic that last a lifetime. There are things that you actually die of, and saying it's all meant to be is just so exceedingly thoughtless, in my opinion, and
Yes.
limited in the context that you feel okay
Hmm.
saying that.
So I do Qigong on Wednesdays, and we always finish with this Chinese Hao La. So one day I asked, what do we actually say? And she said, oops, I need to kind of go back and figure it out. I used to know what it meant, but now I just say, what does it mean? And it means everything is perfect and it will only get better. So everything is okay as it is, and it will get better. And I think, yeah, the men things are meant to be come out of a. I was just talking this morning about now the laws of or the principles of open space, and one is whatever happens is the only thing that could have, which has made me much more mild about how things turn out. We're all there, we're all trying our best. Maybe we're not, maybe we're trying to sabotage. Anyway, we are who we are, and then I fully accept what happens, and yet it can be better and it needs to be better. So I'm more in that.
Yes, yes. I mean, that's more acceptable. That's a piece of rational thinking that I can accept as an attitude. It doesn't just like, oh, it's all fine, everything is where it's meant to be. There's more to it than that.
Yeah. And I think those, when it is a cliche, it was meant to be, then, yeah. But I think there's people who really truly feel that everything that happens is meant to be. It doesn't make it right, though.
No, no, but I think people use it as a sort of comfort thing. It didn't, it wasn't what I expected, it wasn't what I wanted, but hey, it's fine because it was all meant to be. So I'm not going to, and I just think it's easy enough for us to do that in the context that we're living, because on the whole, things are not that bad, and we've
Yeah.
probably, it's sort of, it's like, I thought I would, I don't know, I would have a particular experience, or I'd make a certain amount of money or something like that. And it didn't work out that way, but my company went broke. But hey, now I'm a millionaire, so it was all meant to be, just it was just another route. And that's sort of I don't know, it irritates me.
Yeah, um I was invited to witness a funeral online last week, and the son of my friend who died at age 59, um, she was a very spiritual woman, a spiritual leader, I would say. And her son said, it was written, which in a way is it was meant to be, right? And she fought with everything she had, she fought the cancer. And at some point, you have to kind of release, you can't. And the thing has just taken over. You need to kind of surrender to death. And you can say, many people say, oh, she died too young, he was too young. And there I go. I have very much whatever happens is the only thing that could have. Apparently, it has happened. So saying that it shouldn't have happened doesn't really help me. I feel we need to face those kinds of things that happen. It has happened. So, yes, if we had lived, 100 years on, maybe we won't die from things, people 100 years ago died from things we don't die of anymore. And doesn't mean that was meant to happen. Well, at the time, it was the only thing that could have happened. So,
Yes,
yeah.
no, I completely agree with that. I don't think I don't like the idea of holding grudges against life. I don't think that's helpful
Mm,
at all. Somebody, my life was ruined because my husband died too young,
yeah.
or I don't think that's helpful for our mental health, apart from anything else. I don't think it, puts you in a good position to be angry. I mean, of course, if you're grieving, if something's happened, something
Yeah.
bad's happened, you
Of
go through
course,
it.
there are times you would want it differently.
Yeah.
Uh, and we have to kind of stomach these things and yeah.
But yes, you certainly have to, I think, have to come to a place where you accept what has happened as what's happened,
Even
and
if it is unacceptable.
even if
Like
it
many things
even
in
if it's
life, many things
unacceptable.
these days are unacceptable.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But there are things you can do things about, and there are things you can't do things about, and there is that yes, that quote. Give me, yeah, well, I can't remember it. I'm not even going to try and quote it. I can only remember it because Margaret Thatcher said it on the steps of Downing Street when she became Prime Minister, and it seemed particularly inappropriate in retrospect. But anyway, it's give me the grace or the strength to um,
Oh, accept what I cannot
yes,
change,
yes,
change what
exactly.
I cannot accept. I don't know,
Yes,
something
that
like
sort of
that.
thing.
Things
Yeah,
I cannot change.
exactly.
Oh, okay.
So, which is a sort of a true enough sort of thing to say, but annoying in
Yeah.
her mouth, I think.
Yeah.
um, so, what else do you find irritating at the moment? What triggers you? Anything? I mean,
Well,
let's think of little things.
what triggers me is I just got a lovely friend, and I think younger people do this. They leave voice messages, and I go like, reading something is so much easier. It takes more time to type when you're on your phone, not when you're on your computer. Then the WhatsApps and the Signal messages get longer. But when would I listen to that?
I
I
know.
find it, I would want to a re-education program for that as well.
I think
And sometimes it is really lovely. My niece sent me a voice message, and I do enjoy hearing her voice, so that's there too.
so. Yes, some people are allowed to send you voice messages, but only certain people.
Only certain people,
Yes, that's
and
fair enough. No, you should have a list, you on your WhatsApp,
yeah,
whatever. You can send
yeah,
me
we
a
should
voice
have
message.
a
If
kind
you're
of
not on,
marks with what your allowances. Yes,
yes, if you're
but
not
also
on.
I postpone listening to them.
Yes, 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 exactly. And also, if you're, I don't know, just looking at your phone, or you've got, if for instance somebody sent me a message here, I could quickly, I could look down, or it would pop up on my screen, and if they've written it, I can see what it is and whether it's worth dealing with. If it's a voice message, I'm not going to be able to, stop a meeting or a conversation.
Surreptitiously, is that the word? While the other people is a person is talking too long, you can't deal with it in the
No,
moment.
no, exactly. Exactly. But it's also the same, with voice messages. Again, it is exactly the kind of people who talk and also take in information through,
Yeah.
verbally, who do that. And I'm not that person. I'm the person who wants to write it down. So it's very precise what I'm saying. And, I want to hear back from you. But it is just that, that very different kind of brain function, I suppose, really. And the apps and things that we have now make both of them possible. I mean, maybe I want to really just go back to either you telephone me on the telephone and I will talk to you, or you will write me a letter and I will open it when the post delivers it and read it, and then I will write back to you. Maybe that's the kind of nostalgia I want to go back. Since of course I don't want to go back to that. It was very limiting and wasting of
We were
time.
talking about that the other day, how what was the world before we had this thing that we still call a phone? Well, that's kind of the least that we do with it. And And I remember kind of my phone was kind of part of my hand, and it could spend a whole day trying to get hold of someone. And and now, of course, you just type a message and then it's with them, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That is
exactly.
much easier.
Exactly. And I think we make different rules for the different formats, don't you? So if you send someone an email, you are prepared to wait for a few hours before they get back to you. I'm sure we all have in our heads, I
Yeah.
think, 3 hours and I want to hear back from you if I've sent you an email.
Oh, really? No, mine
Kind of,
is more, it depends, but
it
I
depends on.
can, a day is fine.
Yes, yes. I mean, I think in our business we say we'll be back to you within 24 hours, which
Yeah.
is reasonable. But if I've WhatsApped someone, I expect them to come back instantly. I'm very
Yeah.
annoyed if I don't get the two blue ticks straight away and they haven't got their phone with them or they're not, they haven't looked at it and given me some kind of response
So
immediately.
we are speeding each other up, aren't we?
Yeah, yes. But I'm sort of, I suppose I'm more thinking of, we all have our own little rules for different. I mean, for instance, with Facebook Messenger, which I only use for a few people, I see I see that as much more personal, and I find it really irritating when people Facebook message me, either as a kind of business introduction or, sort of something they
Business introduction should go through LinkedIn.
LinkedIn,
Don't
exactly,
they know that?
exactly. Yes, yes,
Do
completely.
you accept all the links at LinkedIn, all the invitations?
I do. We have I mean, we have
Really?
an actual strategy that we kind of build our LinkedIn connections because anybody might want to write a book at some stage. So,
Ah.
I'm fairly undiscriminating
So
about,
that's a strategy, accept everybody.
yeah. Yes, exactly.
That can be a strategy. You can have a strategy meeting about the strategy and then have the strategy accept everybody. Yeah, anybody might be, yeah, that's of
Well,
course
I mean, maybe not anybody. There are a few people I'm clearly not going to want to have in my connections particularly. I mean, I know that for a lot of people, they invite me to connect. I know that if I connect with them, if I say yes, they will immediately send me an automated message saying, would you like my services? I do this, I do that. Shall we talk? And mostly I just ignore those. And I don't think that's rude because
no, no, no. That's
that's
no, no, no. That's not rude. That's just trying. That's just putting leaflets through your mailbox in the
exactly,
old-fashioned way,
exactly.
right?
So
Yeah.
so that's okay, and I don't mind them doing it because that's how people work. That's how people. I
I
wonder if
still go with LinkedIn, like, have I met you? Have we been to the same event? Do you know many people that I know? If I know, if we have one person in common who already I don't really know well, then I don't accept.
no, but you're not selling services through a business card,
No,
are you?
mostly I think people are, because I invest, a lot of
Exactly.
people are looking for investments, so I have to also
Yes, 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 exactly. You're on the other end.
close the door.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Yeah.
But I have Book Magic and I have Rethink Press and
Yeah.
my mastermind, and I want to be able to, at some points, get out to as many people as possible the
Yeah.
message they might be interested. So that's exactly the opposite.
Yeah, I
But
was having this discussion with Jos about, how Meta is now using Facebook and no, not in, yeah, and Instagram, or, whatever you put there. And he says, I might leave Instagram. And he has his Instagram for his paintings. He's a painter. And I said, but you want your paintings to be in public. So, really.
why would
But
you?
I don't use, yeah, Instagram I use occasionally, and Facebook, I'm hardly there anymore. Are you a Facebook person?
I am. The sort of personal stuff I kind of put more. Actually, you may not realize this, but you are on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Threads, because
Really?
I post a clip from our conversations every day of the week. So you're there.
Really? Well, I see them on LinkedIn, but otherwise, what is Threads? I don't even know what it is.
Threads is a sort of little newer. I think it's got a smaller kind of. I don't know. I'm not sure. I think it belongs to. I think it's also a Meta one. It's sort of somehow, yeah, I think it's,
Like meta. I want to
oh,
get
I
away
know.
from meta.
I know. And I don't do anything. Do you do anything on Twitter, X?
No, 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 no. I've left that long ago. I left. In the beginning, I thought it was so funny as a word person to have a message and only 140 signs
Yes.
was really a little puzzle to solve every day. But I've left it long ago, and especially since Mr. M bought it, I think it is a very toxic environment.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly.
far
Exactly.
away from it.
Yes. Yes. No, that's
Yeah. So anything else you're grumpy about? You would want to grump. I don't know if that's a verb in English. Can you
I
grump about something? Or
I actually get grumpy about people who do the grumpy thing. I mean, I'm part of a few Facebook groups which are kind of life in the 60s, and I grew up in the 50s and things like that because not because I contribute to them, but because they're kind of quite good research for my novel. I sometimes see, photos, or there are memories, or there are, sort of fashion items and things that kind of trigger me into having ideas. But there are so many people there who go, oh, yes, people were pretty, women were prettier, everybody was more polite. Those were the good old days. And oh God, it's so annoying. And they,
so you're there as a viewer, not as a contributor, and then you are criticizing what you don't contribute to. So there's also something there. Of course, like, yeah, but I think there is some pleasure sometimes in being annoyed. I don't really like being annoyed, but just kind of voicing what I'm grumpy about. People in a classical concert and they've brought papers and they have no idea how much a piece of paper, the noise it makes.
yeah,
So yeah, no, so there's a lot about sound I notice in my that I'm
interesting.
grumpy about and that I would
Yes,
like to, yes, and walking slowly and going in the wrong lane. That's
yes.
really my two items that I would like to re-educate people about.
Music in lifts and buildings and supermarkets. I mean, I don't like music full stop, but that particular genre of meaningless, hideous music I can
Yeah.
do without. But I don't know, perhaps it gives an ambiance that I'm not sort of privy to.
But in maybe it covers, other noises. But in
Yes,
general, I mean, it's so easy to go around being irritated.
yes, yes, absolutely.
And so I counteract that within myself.
Yeah.
And it really works when you walk in the street and you smile, another person will also smile. Yeah. So I try to be kind and light, and I fail at it on a daily basis. But anyway, I try not to be a grumpy old woman.
No, no, I absolutely agree. I work against being that.
I
And I think
work against it. That's
yes. And I think it ages you as well. If you're just a grumpy all the time, and you allow yourself to feel irritated, it's quite aging. It stops you being open and learning
yeah,
and appreciating.
yeah, yeah. I think learning, appreciating, being open is the how can I say keeps you nourished and also kind of online with what's happening. Just
Yes, yes,
to
yes.
use that word, part of what's happening.
Yeah,
A spectator.
yeah. Yes, exactly. Exactly. That's my excuse for watching popular television. I like to know what's going on in the world and what people are thinking and feeling and enjoying.
Hmm.
I don't think
I
talking
know well, I watch television sometimes with Jules when he's not there, but the television doesn't, has no role in my life.
no,
Oh,
no, it's
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, no, but you have a purpose for it. Of course, as eldest daughters, we have a purpose for everything, right? We're just not wasting our time.
Exactly. Yes, maybe that's what it's all about, not wasting time.
Well, it's nice
Well,
to be a bit grumpy about things. Thank
that was a
you.
freewheeling sort of discussion.
Yeah,
Well, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being grumpy about the things that I was grumpy about and not being grumpy as well,
laugh a little about it too.
indeed.
Make it humorous.
Okay. Try not
Okay, see you next week.
See you next week. Try not to be grumpy in the meantime.
Bye.